Episode 1 of Rebelde Season 1 begins with a teen hazing at Elite Way School. These freshman students are all brought together into the main hall and forced to strip. Before we find out the outcome to this though, we cut back in time several hours back to catch up with each of our kids about to start school. Jana is a musician but overshadowed by her mother. Luca is an influencer but has an estranged relationship with his father, especially when he finds out Luca wants to pursue music. Sporting a blonde mohawk, Dixon is another new arrival. Unlike Luca, his mum struggles to hold back tears in the wake of her son leaving. Joining them is an English exchange student, Marie-Jose, MJ, a jock and Sebastian, and a sweet, chill kid called Esteban. All of them are there to study music, of course, but their real target is the Musical Excellence program, which can be reached by winning the Battle of the Bands. Everyone here is talented, but that's not enough to sell. These kids need to learn quickly that there's more to music than talent. Their principal, Selena Ferrer, gathers all the kids after they've got changed into their uniforms. Emilia and Sebas are the co-captains going into this year, with auditions due to take place for Battle of the Bands. Now, already we have some drama brewing between the different kids. MJ is a fish out of water, constantly checking social media and causing disruptions with her teacher. Dixon begins stealing from his fellow students, including his own roommates. Meanwhile, Esteban takes a fancy to Jana, and the pair have a spark together, but she's dating Sebas. However, when MJ sits with Esteban at lunch, the two start to get along well too. That night, things take a turn for the dramatic. Esteban helps Jana with her song After Hours, but Sebas winds up seeing them sitting cozily together on the same bench. This will almost certainly cause drama going forward. However, there's no time for that as we catch up to the opening scenes of the season. The hazing takes place and all our main characters are forced to sing together. The thing is, they're actually really good. Unfortunately, the masked students cause a massive fire to break out, courtesy of spilling alcohol and dropping candles. As the fire rages, the future of this school hangs by a thread. Episode 2 of Rebelde Season 1 begins with a wall of fire spreading across the room. As Principal Ferrer shows up, she scoots the kids out the room as authorities arrive to put out the fire. In the aftermath of this, all the kids face expulsion for their antics. Anita and Ferrer obviously don't believe the story about masked students and hazing, but it is going all the way up to the board meeting on Thursday. They'll be the ones to decide their fate. That also means they can't audition. Realizing how devastating this would be, Jana decides to take the blame to save the others. They can now all audition. While the kids clean up the charred floor and walls of the rehearsal room, Sebas tries to talk Jana around, imploring her to let his mum get involved. Given she's in a position of political power, it could help swing things in her favor. However, she refuses. Between auditioning, Jana calls on the talents of Dixon to help her find the real culprits of the hazing. With the surveillance footage a bust, Jana reflects thoughtfully that one of the kids had a bad ankle. Checking the nurse's file, she notices Emilia's name popping up, the popular girl who seems to be everywhere. Dixon implores her to be patient, checking video footage from the night and noticing that Sebastian's dorm seems to be a hotspot. Is he involved somehow? Jana outright asks him, but he takes offense and walks away, pointing out that he wouldn't do that to someone he loves dearly. Speaking of love, Luca's father sends a brand new car and a whole wad of cash Luca's way, but he sees through these vapid gifts and calls out his dad for being absent. You can't put a price on love. In the wake of all this drama, we then cut forward to the auditions. All the different kids step up and show what they're made of, including Andy and Dixon, who both add a different flavor to proceedings. Luca's dad even arrives to see his son sing, while Jana's fate is sealed with expulsion. The thing is, she also misses Esteban's audition but does kiss him in the middle of the hallway. Esteban asks about her boyfriend, but she ignores that and keeps kissing. This isn't helped, of course, by an earlier fight between her and Sebas. Meanwhile, Dixon uncovers a video on Curry's phone, incriminating him as one of the masked men. With this newfound evidence, this allows Jana to audition and Ferrer to reflect thoughtfully. Ferrer has her concerns that the kids responsible for the hazing are a group called the Lodge. Word of this spreads quickly, as a note is put up in the rehearsal room: "We know what you did. You're screwed." Episode 3 of Rebelde Season 1 begins with our main characters finding the note from the lodge. These guys happen to be a secret society, one that Jana's mom was actually a part of years back when she attended school. Jana is determined to put a stop to this, determined to hit back against the bullies and force them into submission. The others, though, are not so sure. They all vote and decide against getting involved. While they talk, Luca receives a message from an unknown sender telling him he needs to get better friends. Even worse, he's being watched too. These guys clearly think Luca is the weak link, and it appears he's about to get his resolve tested across this episode. Jana begins to suspect Sebas is the one responsible for the hazing, given he has an ankle injury. So naturally, she's going to play dumb, keeping her friends close and enemies closer while simultaneously outing Sebas for his involvement. All the while, I may add, these two are still technically dating. That's also something Dixon reminds her of as well, urging her to talk to Esteban. In the midst of all this drama, the Battle of the Bands looks set to go ahead. Only, our misfits find themselves trying to team up and struggling to form a cohesive group. While this is going on, Farrah starts to interview the kids, one at a time, determined to find out who was responsible for the hazing. Curry uses the excuse that he was playing Fortnite at the time, but video evidence is enough for Farrah to make a bold choice and expel him. Jana tries to search through Siva's belongings, but she's caught red-handed. All this sneaking around is too much for Sebas, who breaks up with her in front of everyone. It's also filmed by numerous students too. Jana immediately marches up to Dixon in the aftermath of this, trying to work out what they're going to do next. With most of the kids eventually coming together to form their band, without name, Luca is given instructions to join them by the mystery sender. He's been the wildcard for most of this season, and it seems he's being planted to sabotage the band. Esteban figures out Luca's password on his laptop. Luca loves Luca and sets to work trying to discover what he may be hiding. Only, MJ shows up to talk and profess her feelings just as he's trying to hack in. As Esteban leans over to shut the book, MJ leans forward and kisses him just as Jana opens the door and sees the pair together. Episode 4 of Rebelde Season 1 begins with Luca meeting the lodge out in the woods, just off campus. They've recruited Luca to their cause in a bid to disrupt the band and sabotage them. If Luca does this stopping Jana and the others, then he'll be recruited to the winning team and, subsequently, win the Battle of the Bands by default. It's an enticing offer and one that Luca decides to take up. While Luca is having a shower, Esteban hacks into his laptop and begins copying all of his files across to a USB stick. Twiddling his thumbs, Esteban hopes he's not caught in the act. Unfortunately, Dixon bursts in ahead of time, disrupting the transfer. When Luca shows up, Dixon covers for Esteban. Meanwhile, Jana is standoffish with MJ following her kiss with Esteban. She tries to apologize, but Jana puts on a brave face and tells her it doesn't matter. She promises to talk about things after the Battle of the Bands has finished. Jana is not happy, calling out the cheating, which is ironic given she cheated on Sebas without batting an eyelid, and it causes all sorts of drama to ensue. During break, Esteban clears the air with Dixon. He doesn't fancy MJ, and he's been looking into Luca because he's suspicious. It was all one big misunderstanding. While they manage to patch things up, Jana is much less forgiving. Naturally, Luca senses an opportunity and jumps all over this, stirring things up and calling Jana controlling and manipulative. This continues on throughout the episode too, as Luca talks to each member individually, casting doubts in their mind. Luca's words work wonders to cause drama in the rehearsal hall. Of course, with the upcoming Battle of the Bands, 20 different bands are going to compete against one another, with 8 moving on to the next round. But if without name can't come together and play, how are they going to proceed to the next round? Unfortunately, it all blows up, and the band is quickly disbanded. When alarms wail, Esteban takes his opportunity to copy those files across from Luca's laptop, given his earlier attempt was unsuccessful. While he does, Jana too begins investigating. With the kids all standing outside, Andy questions Amelia over her kisses. Now, several times this season we've seen her kiss Andy in secret, and it's difficult to know if there's an ulterior motive here or not. According to Emilia though, this is her strategy. Well, another strategy soon takes an obvious turn as Esteban runs into Jana, and the pair end up having sex. When they both head outside together, this works well to relieve the pent-up frustrations Jana had. She apologizes to MJ for the mix-up, and the band get back on the same page. Meanwhile, Esteban sits with Dixon and admits what he's actually investigating Luca for. He doesn't care about the music, but he wants to find his mum. When Esteban was a kid, his mum left, and his dad covered it up, claiming she died. The thing is, he found a newspaper clipping of her on Luca's computer. Her name is Rocio, and she's a musician too. She was a music teacher, but has now gone missing, right off the back of an incriminating letter from Marcelo, Luca's father. Within this, he told her to stay away from his family. Could he have been involved in her disappearance? Esteban certainly seems to think so, which explains why he's been hacking into the laptop and transferring files. Dixon promises to keep his lips sealed, sharing this secret. With everything patched up, things take a turn for the worse that afternoon. A masked member of the lodge breaks in and grabs Esteban, beating him down. Sebas and Emilia happen to be performing together while this occurs, so it appears they both have alibis. With Esteban a no-show for Without Name, just before they're about to play no less, the band's chances hang by. Episode 5 of Rebelde Season 1 begins with Without Name up on stage performing, with Esteban. Oh, I guess he's okay then. So much for that big cliffhanger. Anyway, with a bandaged ear and no crowd to play for, Without Name do well to impress the judges. Without the popular vote though, they seem destined to fail. After the audition, Ferrer and Anita question Esteban, determined to find out what happened to him. He's not sure who attacked him though, and worse, the files on the USB drive don't seem to have transferred correctly. Jana decides to play Sebas at his own game, inviting Sebas and the gang to an after-party at Jana's place. Given her parents are out, it's the perfect opportunity to let the school see them play and to screw over Sebastian. Jana is convinced he's the one behind everything, and she intends to make him confess, getting him drunk, so he opens up. Andy though is not so sure this will work. The party goes ahead, and the crew set up some hidden cameras. I say hidden, the one in a flower pot is literally in plain view, but let's roll with it. Dixon starts to get cold feet too, worried about MJ drinking and not wanting her to be put in a compromising position by Sebas. As all the kids begin partying, they listen to Without Name performing before Esteban takes Luca aside and confronts him outside. He believes Luca is the ringleader and threatens to out him to the whole school. Luca scoffs at the threat and tells him to leave, or he'll regret it. Esteban runs out of patience and shows off the picture of his mum, wanting to know what's going on. Sebas does finally show up with Emilia, just in time to see the band play again. This time MJ takes center stage and ends up singing, which certainly catches Sebastian's attention. Andy and Emilia wind up kissing too, with the latter claiming this is her first time with a girl. Meanwhile, Sebas encourages MJ to get into the hot tub with him. When she does, eventually, Sebas decides to play a game of truth or dare. Dixon watches all of this unfold from the bedroom, clearly angsty and hunched over the laptop. Given his clear affection for MJ, it's tough going, but he keeps his cool. MJ, though, does not. As she keeps drinking, MJ eventually opens up and questions Sebas over whether he's part of the lodge, destroying their cover. When MJ passes out in the pool and Sebas leaves, Dixon rushes outside to grab her and save the girl from drowning. In private, Sebas admits to Jana that he's the one responsible for everything. Only, she has no proof, so she's stuck with more questions than answers. When Sebas leaves, he hitches a ride with Anita, promising that he's put Jana in her place, and asks to head to her place. Episode 6 of Rebel begins with Anita communicating with Luca at the party, telling him the group are close to giving up. She tells him he needs to keep pushing this and make sure it's finalized. When the call ends, Anita grills Sebas for almost blowing their cover. She encouraged him not to go to the party, but he didn't listen, and now they've been put in a difficult position. With the semi-finals coming up for Battle of the Bands, all our characters take their places in the crowd the next day. Farah briefs the semi-finalists. They need to film a music video for a different RBD classic. Our Without Name group have Sálvame as their choice. After the meeting, Esteban confronts Luca. He's going to tell Selena that Luca was the one who got him beaten up in the rehearsal room, unless he reveals what he knows. This is enough for Luca to reveal that Esteban's mum, Rocio, used to be Luca's music teacher. Luca's dad actually used to work with Rosie before she was Luca's teacher too. Luca promises to get him more information, but for a price. He wants Luca's help. In between all this, the kids are interrupted by rehearsals, as they all set to work recording their voices and deciding on an artistic direction for their video. With a heavy dose of auto-tune, the kids lend their voice to the video, which is pretty ironic given they're at a music college. I guess that's what they're teaching these kids now? Anyway, these scenes are essentially irrelevant with what happens next, with a good 2-minute montage dedicated to their finished piece. That night, Dixon notices Anita acting shadily, specifically heading over and meeting Sebas in private. To the surprise of no one at this point, Anita is actually part of the lodge and romantically involved with Sebas, who's cheating on Amelia. But then Amelia is involved with Andy, who both grow closer together. As these two kiss under the moonlight, Dixon and MJ notice them together. But just before the two kiss, a text ping interrupts them and sends them back to the dorms, where they finish up their video. Luca eventually does ring his father, who claims he doesn't know what happened to Rocio. It clearly leaves him a little flustered though, telling his son not to bring this up again. Well, if that isn't a guilty admission, I don't know what is. The video for Without Name goes ahead, but there's a problem. The video in question has been tampered with and actually shows the girls shower. Jana immediately suspects Luca and confronts him after, while Principal Farah brings the group together and is forced to disqualify them all. They believe Esteban is responsible too, given the cameras show him sneaking about. The real culprit appears to be Sebas, who tells Anita that he's a wolf as he walks away down the hallway. Episode 7 of Rebelde Season 1 begins with Jana turning her attention from accusing Sebas to Luca. Without proof though, there's not much for her to do. Unfortunately, Luca continues to stir things up, throwing shade at everyone including MJ, Dixon, and Esteban. Luca scoffs at this makeshift group, claiming they're not friends and never have been, walking away after burning bridges. After dropping this bombshell, Dixon breaks the news that he's not actually a famous rapper called Dixon. Shock, horror, he was an altar boy and forced to attend a Catholic school. He always wanted to be famous though, hence the persona. This confession paves way for MJ to open up too, claiming her parents never wanted her to come to school. Andy also reluctantly admits she's seeing Amelia in secret. Jana, however, struggles to answer whether they'd even be friends, if not for this competition. Luke arrives before Sebas, desperate for him to honor his side of the bargain. However, it seems like Luca is being iced out, with the deal falling through. While Luca struggles to get what he originally bargained for, the other kids contemplate whether Amelia may actually be part of the lodge. Given how integral she's been to all of this, it would make sense. So who better to pry that information from her than by using Andy as an undercover agent? Only, she's not exactly comfortable about deceiving her lover. One thing she does learn though, is that Sebas is cheating on Amelia, given he smells of old lady perfume. This, combined with Dixon's observations that Anita snuck into Sebastian's dorm room last night, lead the group to realize what's going on here. Jana, however, comes up with a cunning plan to catch them in the act. Armed with their phones, the kids spread out and track Anita's movements. Only, they lose her, as she doubles back and confronts Jana. Farah appears though, forcing the kids back to their dorms before things turn ugly. While all this is going on, Luke remains conflicted over what he should do. He clearly cares about the group and deliberates over whether to oust the lodge completely or even incriminate himself for messing with the music video. As it turns out, he doesn't do either. He receives a message asking to meet at 6 a.m. Meanwhile, Esteban finds his mum, Rocio. She's actually been playing at a small club this whole time. When Esteban confronts Rocio about what's happening involving Luca's father, she drops an almighty bombshell. It turns out Marcelo is actually Esteban's father. Marcelo was only a fling though, given he was married at the time, but one thing led to another, and Esteban was born. When Rocio revealed all of this to Marcelo, he regretted everything. Still, it doesn't explain why she left Esteban's life and never bothered to get in touch. Luca eventually meets the lodge, where they reveal themselves to him by removing their masks. Anita and Sebas are among those involved, and Luca is actually invited to join them too. Will he do it? Either way, as the sun rises, Jana makes her decision and chooses to leave the music school, believing there's nothing there for her anymore. Will Without Name be able to compete? Episode 8 of Rebelde Season 1 begins with Esteban and Jana both dropping out of the band. This spells massive trouble for Without Name, who are now without two of their lead stars. By comparison, this is great for Sebas and their group, who find their fortunes are now favorable to win. With Luca hanging around there too, Esteban suddenly shows up and confronts his brother. Luca scoffs though, calling him a bad knockoff and not his real family. Esteban heads up to the office and hands over the USB of the real video, imploring Ferrer to give the group a real shot. Unfortunately, they're still disqualified from the competition. The only hope now is to call out the lodge and Luca's betrayal. MJ is confronted by her parents outside. They call her out for singing at the party and demand she head home. MJ though urges them to give her a chance, desperate to prove her worth at the upcoming grand finale. Only, given Without Name are not actually in the competition now, that's easier said than done. Emilia's choice. In the middle of all this, Dixon and MJ do finally kiss. It's been teased for a while in this season, but as they sit together, Dixon reassures her that Jana will come back and everything will be okay. Only, this rubs her up the wrong way and she walks off, convinced that Jana isn't coming back. Of course, Sebas overhears and convinces MJ that Jana is jealous of her talent. With no real competitors to compete against, thanks to Sebastian's sabotage, Emilia begins to exhibit regrets. She realizes that Luca was the one who messed with the video originally and sets out to try and right that wrong. It's a decision that's made all the more difficult by Andy growing impatient and refusing to stay in the shadows with her anymore. She wants a real relationship, and the time has come for Emilia to make that choice. What happens with the lodge? That night, Luca feeds back to the lodge what he knows. This is a group that's built on the reputation of your last name, which explains why certain kids are included and others omitted. Without Name became trouble because Anita and the others noticed their talent and couldn't have them win the competition, sabotaging the chance for the lodge to increase its illustrious reputation. As the group confirm all of this themselves, Anita's inclusion in all this falls to coordinator of this school's chapter. Every school has one, as it turns out, but this confession has much wider implications. Jana and the rest of the kids suddenly appear out from the trees, holding phones and recording the whole event. With Sebas and the lodge outed, including Luca too, things seem to be on the up for Without Name. Of course, Marcelo arrives with a slimy proposition for Ferrer, intending to play damage control in order to save his son. The result is that all of the lodge is expelled, but Sebas is allowed to stay. He's also able to attend U's, despite being the leader this whole time. Luca, however, takes the brunt of this, and he's expelled too. What happens at the Battle of the Bands? The grand finale of the Battle of the Bands arrives and Esteban, Jana and Andy immediately stir things up, telling Emilia that Sebas is part of the lodge right before they're due to go on stage. However, this causes Emilia to make a bold decision, holding Andy's hand and taking her out onto stage. She kisses her in front of everyone and interrupts another band while they're playing, I may add. As she heads backstage, Emilia quits the band, leaving Sebas in limbo. MJ makes a bold decision, deciding not to be a backup singer and taking Emilia's place, deciding to save Sebas the embarrassment of being on his own. It's a pretty selfless choice, but also one that ruffles Dixon's feathers. Without name eventually head out and perform their song, letting everyone know beforehand that the lodge are responsible for all the drama this season and how they were forced to stay silent. Their song is eventually received well, with the whole crowd erupting into rapturous applause. How does Rebelde Season 1 end? As the episode closes out, Luca leaves Hughes with the last laugh, telling Marcelo to worry about his other son as the car drives off. The episode review. So Rebelde bows out with all the big plot points resolved, and this reboot ending on a high. The whole lodge subplot has felt a little lackadaisical at times, but at least the ending resolved everything and tried to explain what their motivations were. This is something I wish the show had explored a little more, but what we get is sufficient enough across these 8 episodes. The series has had a nice ebb and flow to it at times, with the teen drama, despite being formulaic and cliched, working well to actually add some depth to the characters. There's definitely potential here for a second season as well, but it will really depend on how well this one is received by audiences, of course. Either way, Rebelde has been a turbulent but nonetheless enjoyable ride, with enough here to recommend. It's not perfect, but the ending serves up a nice feel-good treat.